I mean,
All right. Well, now that we made that effortlessly smooth transition
Oh,
to
so good.
your travels, we are not paid enough to do this. We are of the highest degree.
Yes.
Um, so you are joining me for Badger Beer Travels because, as I mentioned in the introduction, we are going to Menomonie. And for
Yeah,
those that are not familiar with Menomonie, that is up by Landon's neck of the woods, actually one county over,
that's right.
about half an hour due west of Eau Claire.
Yep.
Menomonie population about 17,000 on the Lake Menominee right there, home of UW Stout. A little fun fact that when I was doing a little research is that back in 2012 they were one of Smithsonian's top 20 small towns in America. I should say
Very
top
nice.
20, not the 20 small towns, but
Yeah.
that is what it is. Which I thought was an interesting little tidbit there. And what we are here for, though, is not about Smithsonian lists or the university. We are here for the breweries. And
Yeah.
there are 3 breweries there in Menomonie. And I know that you have had some experiences at all of these. And I myself have visited 2 of the 3 of them and had great beer at them as well. And Menomonie is obviously not a huge city. So the
No.
breweries can't be that spread out to begin with. But even in regards to that, they are pretty, close together there. I kind of included that there in the bottom that if you're willing to walk, you can get to all of them within a mile of each other.
Yep.
All 3 of them. So
Right.
it makes for a nice little brewery hopping day if you are in that area. When I was passing through and stopped, I only had time for 2 of them. Hopefully, at some point, I can get to Lucette, which was the third that I missed out on. But now, without further ado, though, we can start with the one that is closest kind of to the downtownish area and on the lake there, Zimmergy Brewing Company. And the name, you may see, well, not a whole lot of words that begin with Z, and Zimmergy actually refers to the process of fermentation and brewing, which is how they came up with that. It's not somebody's weird last name or something like that.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, they're right across the street from the lake. They opened up in 2018, so I was actually there kind of shortly after, about less than a year from their opening in a former auto body shop. And one thing that they really stressed me when I was talking there, because I included that in my notes, as well as if you go onto their website, I believe they talk about that too, that
Hmm.
they use a lot of local ingredients in their beer. Like they really do make an effort to do that. And another thing that I did not know until I was kind of going back to do more research about this, they host the Murder Fest, which
Yeah.
is Menominee's death metal music festival. It's annual. It's been going on for multiple years, I guess. And that is a thing. I had no idea, but I'm guessing maybe you guys cover that at some point in events, because if not, you need to. It looks like quite the event.
It
And they're also
is.
dog
Yeah.
friendly.
Yep. Yeah.
And as always, I like to include some examples of some of the beer, kind of some of the ones that you may see that they included as flagships: Fluffhead, the Honey Hefeweizen, Afternoon Joe, the Coffee Ale, Toast Brown Ale, the Terry Porter, Robust Porter. I know that's one of their big flagships as well.
Yep.
They have a German Pilsner Zeitgeist, and then I included. They also had some kind of, looking at their tap list, some interesting barrel-aged beers, like the barrel-aged English barley wine.
Yep.
And I went back through my notes, and my favorite is actually a kind of an offshoot of that Hefeweizen. I had a cranberry honey Hefeweizen.
That one's
They
good.
were, yeah,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
had a little offshoot of that. So I guess, what experiences do you have with Zimmergy and their beer? Because these are pictures from my visit, but again, that was
Yep.
from a while ago.
And that's pretty accurate still. I mean, that's what your flight will probably look like. The tap room is pretty much the same deal. They in this time, they open up those garage doors still. They have food trucks. Not only do they have Murder Fest, but they have, quite often they have musical talent that'll come in and play a set or two. And John, the head brewer slash owner, he does a lot of collabs with Brewery Nonick, which you'll get to here in a little bit. But he and Ryan that owns and brews for Nonick, they're pretty good friends, so they do quite a few collabs. If you ever want to know when one of those is coming out, they do a pretty good job on social media letting people know when that kind of stuff goes on.
Yeah. No, it definitely seems like it's another one of those breweries that seems to have a pretty robust variety
Yeah.
of options, that kind of depending on what you're looking for, you will probably find something
And
to
I
try.
think the ones you have there are pretty regular.
Yeah,
They're
most of
usually on.
that's what I try to include, maybe a couple of the other
Yep.
ones. And by the way, that is a typo. That's supposed to say Brewery Nonic because I also included it on the next slide.
Correct.
Because Brewery Nonic, as you mentioned already, they do a lot of collabs together. But they were established around the same time. I actually think this was established very early 2019. And I visited them very shortly after they opened. And this is one of the cooler tap rooms, I would say, not just in this part of the state. I would say the whole state. This is up there in terms of how they repurpose the space.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're able to kind of design both the brewery, the bar kind of together. It's an old 1906 train station, and they really kept a lot of the building the same. Like all the windows are the same, lots of original bricks, and there's two separate bars. And one of them is more of just like your typical bar area. And then the other one wraps around the brewing equipment itself. And I forget, I was reading an article about the owner. He calls it like the stage, or so, he refers to it as something of that manner. Because it's like on the brewery is, you're sitting there, it's on display. If someone is brewing while you're in there drinking, you will sit with a front row seat to the whole, the whole shindig. So really cool space. They also now have a permanent food truck with Chef Stacy that I know that she kind of does some different things with that. And speaking of names, I always find it interesting hearing about the background on a brewery's name. They're named for the English pint glass, the Nonic beer glass, for those that may not be familiar with it. And they have some more kind of, they're traditional styles, but they're not styles that you necessarily see everywhere. Like Strange Ways, a British bitter, that's a very traditional style, but it's not one that you see very many breweries making. A Scottish ale, I know we mentioned Third Space earlier. Their Scottish rye ale has won a lot of medals, but Scottish ales aren't necessarily a super popular style either. Little King Milk Stout, Happy Trees IPA. We mentioned the Zeitgeist. And then, I think it's Esprit, the Belgian Patersbier. Like they do some kind of interesting styles. I almost want to hear them in some ways to what, why am I blanking on it right now? The brewery here in Milwaukee. Hold on. I need to look. Anyway, they're doing a lot of styles that you don't necessarily see everywhere. I think Gathering Place. I don't know why I was completely blanking on that. They do a lot of like kind of the European styles that you don't see a lot of places. And I think that's similar to what Brewery Nonic is doing to some regards. I remember at one point you sent a message to us about the Schwarzbier or something like that you were having there. So what are your thoughts on Brewery Nonic?
Fantastic brewery. I mean, some very, and like you covered already, some very unique styles that we don't get to see here in the States. Things that you would see pretty regularly in England, Ireland, that kind of thing. Very low ABV beers. You really don't see anything above 5 or 6. 5 or 6 is pretty high.
That's my kind of place.
Yeah, very sessionable. You can have 3 and you'd be just fine. My favorite beer, they put out a sweet potato porter in the fall.
Ooh.
Very good, very sessionable. And of course, that's as close as you'll get to a pumpkin beer for me there. So that's probably
I mean, sweet potato pumpkin, those are pretty much cousins. So
right. Ryan's a great guy. I've known him for a while so he used to brew this before it became Brewery Nonic. He was in maybe a barrel and a half, very small system in a place in Menomonie. He was brewing in the basement, and so then he just naturally progressed to here. He and his dad are the ones that remodeled this whole train station.
Well, so if you can tell them that they did I mean, I'm sure you've told them they've done a fabulous job with it, because they did because like I said, they repurposed it in a way that the building still is speaking to its history while also being extremely functional for what it currently is. So,
Yep.
and that's what I always look for. Like I've gone to breweries in a lot of different types of buildings, and it's always nice when the space is still functional, but you can still tell what it was, and that
Right.
history of the building is still present, and it's not gutted and put up drywall and that's the end of it. Because I've been to those too, and where you don't
Sure.
really know what it was. So
Right.
I do think that is very commendable to keep that piece of history for the community as well.
And one small thing about Chef Stacy, she does I think it's Thursdays. She does Thursdays, and it's like curry, some Asian inspired food, and then I think brunch is always on Sunday.
Yeah.
So fantastic food.
Yeah.
And it goes fast.
I'm sure, especially when it's like I think it's kind of a limited thing. Because I remember on the website it said something about basically it's available or open till it's gone.
Yeah,
that this isn't an unlimited buffet style thing where you can just come as and everything. So
right. Yeah.
And speaking of things kind of in the community, Lucette is kind of an interesting one. This is the one that I was not able to visit, but so they were founded back in 2010. And then they started canning things in 2012, but then the tap room came along later in 2015. It's I have to, like I said, sucker for the name. They're actually named for Paul Bunyan's sweetheart, Lucette, which I thought was a fun, like all three of these names, it's a very fun group of names in terms of where the background they're coming from.
Yeah.
So if you're hungry, they do the Neapolitan style pizzas. And if you are with someone that prefers not to drink beer, or maybe you got some kids with you, they also make their own root beer.
Yep.
And then the real kicker is that they have an event pavilion that can host a variety of events. You can see the pictures up there, can seat up to 250 people. So you're talking about weddings, corporate events, class reunions, all that kind of stuff. So it looks like a fabulous place. It seems like a great venue to host that kind of event. And again, seems to have a variety of beers. One of their big sellers, I guess, is their blonde ale, the Farmer's Daughter.
Yep.
They have Slow Hand Stout, the Hazy IPA, which I love it when you call me Big Hoppa. I feel like the good play on words there.
Yeah.
They also had a Beer to Guard, French Connection, the Porcano, the Mexican lager with lime. And then I think most of those were all like pretty regular beers. And I also tossed in the Adventure Sandals Hazy IPA with peach, because from what I could tell, a majority of those, they do lean a lot more into the IPAs than any of the other breweries in the area. Or I would say they lean pretty heavy into IPAs compared to most breweries is what I would say, but that they do have the other options as well, depending on what you're looking for.
Their mainstay is the Farmer's Daughter. That one's always on. That's the kind of the beer that they kind of, their regular, that's the biggest selling one. Slow Hand, I think, is always on too. I've had the Beer to Guard before. And I think
Chris says he's a big fan of the Slow Hand.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. This one, that event space just recently got added on. I would say within the last year and a half, it finally got completed. They have a nice outdoor space too that's in front that you can sit outside. The one interesting thing, so you can see the pizza oven there behind those canned beers. That pizza oven came from Italy.
Oh, wow.
And apparently that pizza oven, because it came from Italy, came with an old Italian woman for a little while.
Oh, really?
So when they first opened, she was training them how to cook the pizza the proper way.
Yeah.
And pizza was coming out that looked good, but it wasn't apparently up to her standards. So she'd basically say, no, it's shit, and she'd toss it away. And then yell at them and make them do it again, do it the right way.
That had to be quite the work environment there for a couple of weeks. Then.
It was entertaining to watch.
I missed that in my research. Obviously, that they didn't write an article about that. That
did not. I think it was one of those things you had to be there for.
Okay, yeah, they weren't necessarily promoting that fact that they had an Italian woman just screaming at them about making the pizzas wrong.
I can't tell you it is at least it's up to my standard. The pizza's fantastic.
Yeah. They look really good. Like I said, so as this was the one place that I did not visit to, as I mentioned on there, it's got there in the little bottom. These photos are from their own Facebook page. So
right.
But the pizzas, I looked online, they look great.
Yeah.
And that is really cool that they obviously have like a very I guess, traditional official pizza oven. I don't know what the
Yeah.
right word is for that, but it's not your run of the mill pizza oven. That they're not popping them into a microwave behind the bar that you can't
Right.
see.
No, yeah, you can actually just watch them. I mean, that's the bar right there, and they're
Yeah,
cooking it right behind the bar. So yeah, you get to, if you're sitting at the bar at least, or at least downstairs, you get to watch them make pizza as they're doing it.
yeah,
So
that is awesome. And so I guess I can go back here to kind of go back to the other lay of the land side. Do you have any other overarching views on the kind of the beer scene there in Menomonie? Because obviously, Lucette is technically the old dog there, even though the tap room's only
yeah,
been around less than a decade, and then the other two came around both around the same kind of time. But having three breweries for that size of a town is a pretty healthy,
it
robust
is.
offering.
Yeah, I would say if you're going for the beer, start in Nonic and go to Zymergy and then finish at Lucette with pizza. Um, Lucette's still going to have beer that you'll like, but if you're the beer first, food later kind of a person, that's kind of how I would run it. Um, you're going to have to walk up the hill from Nonic to Zymergy, but if you want to walk anyway, but
You got to burn it. I mean, if you're going to be
yeah, you got
eating
to
lots of pizza later, you got to
right.
the calorie deficit has to be built up a little bit.
Yeah, you can burn a few calories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that seems really accurate. Like I said, I would love to spend more time at both Brewery Nonic and Zimmergy that I
Oh
went
yeah.
to, and
Yeah.
also hopefully get back to Lucette. Maybe I can convince my wife to stop there for pizza with the kids at some point.
There you go.
Um, but yeah, so as is the case with how I always like to end it, make sure no matter where you are living or where you're visiting, be sure to drink local everywhere. Cheers, everybody.